I like his
So here,
TWA shirt.
yeah, where I got that?
Airliners International?
No, JFK. The hotel.
Oh, at the
Yeah, there's a
TWA
gift shop there.
hotel.
Yeah, there's a gift
Yeah.
shop there.
Oh, look at that.
And
You been there, Laura?
No, I haven't, but
oh,
we
it's
have a
great.
listener, Anthony, and he sent me some stuff from the TWA hotel when he was there.
Yeah, they got a really great gift shop.
All standby passengers, see me at the podium for your seat assignment.
Non Rev Lounge is a travel and aviation podcast. Monique, Laura, and Tyler are three friends that work for a major airline as gate agent, flight attendant, and ramp worker. During this podcast, they will discuss using their flight benefits to travel the world, as well as talk about things that happen at work. They have guests on almost every week to share their travels and stories, leaving tips on the best places to travel or things to do. Enjoy.
The Non Rev Lounge. I'm Tyler.
I'm Monique. I'm Laura.
And I'm Timotheus from Montreal, Canada.
We love Timotheus.
We are very excited to have Tim, and we're excited for everyone to meet Tim. So Tim has been a guest on the show, but no one's met him because I screwed up. I lost the audio, but that led us to this actually, because you mentioned a while back, we said we needed to have him on again because we lost it. And so we started looking into ways to do a little more virtual and led it to the video, and all worked out. So
He's our first video guest.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you? This is great. Yeah. 4 different schedules.
Finally, the stars all aligned.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about yourself. You mentioned, you're in Toronto or Montreal.
Montreal, yeah. I grew up in Ontario, actually. To go way back, I was born in the Netherlands. So then when we came to Canada, I grew up in Ontario, and I started with Air Company in Toronto. I was there 4 years and then transferred to Montreal. And that's where I've been now since 2002.
And what is
Yeah,
your occupation?
My occupation is an aircraft maintenance engineer, which is the Canadian version of an A&P, which is an airframe power plant technician. And so I've been doing that since 98 when I started. I went my exams, and then the last one you do is air regulations, and then you get your license. And then you do an endorsement course, which gives you all the information about a particular aircraft type. So my first one was the Airbus 320. And at the time, we had DC-9s and RJs, 340s, 330s, 747 Classic, like this little beauty up there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so 320, I did the Embraer 175, 190. After that, the MD-11. So we had a contract with KLM. We were servicing the MD-11s here in Montreal. And then 67. Then I did the 330, 350, 787 was a course I did last year. Then wide bodies. My main focus now on my shift, I start at 11 in the morning, and as I head from the hangar to the ramp, the first flights from Europe are landing. And that's how it begins. And the day just keeps going like that. So we're turning 330s, 777s, 787s. So yeah, it's been 26 years now of doing that. I was an av geek before I knew that was a thing. People thought it was weird. I'm like, what do you like airliners? Like fighter jets are so cool. And I'm like, what are you talking about? These airliners are the best. And mainly I got interested in it because we were flying a lot back to Holland to see family. So we were on KLM on the 747, the DC-10. And in the library at school, we had this book. And I used to take it out all the time. And my teacher's like, why don't you get something else? Read a book. I'm like, oh, this is great. I went back to my school years later, and I was visiting the library, and it was still there, and I was looking at it in the library, and what? I think this book's done its time. So my public school, where I went from like kindergarten to grade 8, they gave me the book. It was part of my collection. And there's, 80s, so it's got all the classics, the DC-10s, 747s, and all that. I used to watch the planes flying over because we were on approach to Toronto, so they were descending around 10,000, so you could easily make out the type. Oh, 747 DC-10. You don't know what that is. I'm like, sure. Of course I know what it is. And I still got it apparently, because when we were doing our practice recording, we were in the yard after, and I was like, oh, 321. And then Tyler's like, yeah, you got it. So it's a bit harder now. Everything's a twin. Back then it was a bit easier because it was with the 47s and even the 340s, you could still tell a difference because the profile was a little different. It was like a little bit narrower and stuff. Yeah. And then when I was like 6, I started writing to the airlines and getting all this podcasts. Yeah, go ahead.
Like Laura and flight pilots, they have to go back every year and do retraining. Do you guys do that with all your different certifications every year? Or how does that work for you guys?
When we do the type courses on the aircraft, that's like a one-time 5-6 week course with some practical training. but we have training modules that come up on our profile, like sometimes it seems every day. So there's always updates on configuration changes or say our 320 fleet. There's always recurrent training when it comes to that thing.
Do you have to keep track of your hours on an aircraft like pilots do? Like I spent 10 hours
No,
on the 7-8. Okay.
no, it's not. We don't keep a logbook. I know with flying, they keep the logbook and then they do the recurrent every 6 months in the sim and stuff. So when we do engine run-ups, that we do like every 2 years on the wide body, we'll go back in the sim and practice all the procedures for if we have engine fire or whatever. Or, what can happen too is you can have a breakaway if you're on, we have winter here, we have ice and snow. So what can happen if you're doing a high power run? Aircraft could slide. So we simulate all that in the simulator and then how to react to that, pull back, power back the engines. And if we're like sliding off, we can use the, reversers to stop the motion and all that. But it's mainly just reacting to abnormal situations. So sometimes they'll throw a flock of birds crossing in front of us. For simulators, after all these years, you'd think you get used to it, but it's still, you get in there and you're nervous. You're like, something's coming, but you don't know which one it's going to be. And then depending on who you're with, your partner is, in my case now, it's usually someone who's a lot newer, which they're not really familiar. But at the same time, they've had training a lot more recently than I did. A lot of them are like whiz kids with electronics and all that, where I'm still, dealing with paper and logbooks and all that. So I'm learning from the new generation. And of course, they learn from us, from our experience.
That's great.
A few weeks ago, I saw a video. There's a passenger. She's looking out the window. The mechanics come up. I think it was on a 737. At the end by the wings, there's a deal that comes down and there's like a little cone, a couple of them. They took one
Yep.
off and they put it in their cart and they drive away. And then the flight was ready to leave, but they never came to put another one on. And the passenger was freaking out.
Kind of worried. Yeah.
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 But
So does flap track canoes. So those are just aerodynamics, just the way the air flows over the wing when you have the flap track mechanism. So as the flaps go down and back up, so those tips or cones. It's funny you mention it. I got one right here.
It was a cone.
Look at that. Canadian
Oh,
Regional
yeah.
Fokker F-28. So it's aerodynamic. So it's not something that you absolutely need to have for the flight. So it
Okay.
just adds to, but there'll be penalties for fuel burn, right? So that's what we call an MEL item, minimum equipment list. And last time Monique was asking, like, what about something about maintenance or whatever that people might not realize or know about. I said, well, it's not on an aircraft. Not every system is going to be working all the time, or it doesn't need to be with redundancy. So that's a perfect example. Part of it's missing or it's damaged, and then we just want to get the aircraft out and we'll deal with it on the overnight to reinstall a new one, or maybe we just don't have it at that station. You guys are operating in the US out of 150 airports, so you can't put parts everywhere. So I can understand from a passenger's point of view, that'd be worrisome. Wait, there's a piece missing. Should we be doing this? But yeah, perfectly fine.
So is the list in the States and in Canada of what is acceptable to play without the same, or is it similar?
The basic MEL list would come from the manufacturer, and
Okay.
then it may depend. I'm sure it differs between companies as far as what kind of items would be on the list, let's say.
The
Since we're talking
Boeing's is
about
probably
it,
a little more liberal.
which one?
Boeing.
A little bit different. In a lot of cases, it's going to be the same. Like, say if you have a toilet in op, depending on the length of the flight, it's going to affect how many seats you can sell. So this is something that would affect you, Monique. You're at the gate, like, oh, what? Sorry, we lost 2 toilets. So yeah, there's 50 seats we don't have. Or that section, it'll be specified which rows and which sections have to be blocked out. And now you're like, okay, so now you got to figure all that out, right? And then, of course, Laura's at the door when the people are coming. I had this seat. Now I got to move. And now she had to smooth it over. And then in a Tyler's situation, let's say if we have a cargo unit or lock that's not working, we can leave that section empty. But now he has to look at his load sheet, and then load planning has to shift things around. And or in some cases, you can't even use the forward or the aft cargo compartment at all if the loading system's not working, or for door latch or whatever. It can be as simple as this light bulb doesn't work, we'll get it done tonight, or you can't use half the seats on the plane. So yeah, the list is pretty long.
And if it's a forward lav too, that may be a no-go because the pilots, when they have to use
Yeah.
the lavatory, they can't go all the way to the aft.
Yeah, it depends on the length of the flight, how many crew are there. Like if they're going to have multiple breaks, then they can spread it out a little bit. On certain aircraft, like the triple's not so bad because they have 2 lavs. But yeah, the crew could say, nope, we're not taking it. APU bleed, for example, you don't need the bleed as long as the engines are running. We use bleed air from the engines, but then you need a jet start. So then Tyler has to go find one and bring it. So we're ready for pushback. So that's one of the things passengers don't realize is not every system's going to be working all the time. And obviously, the bigger the airplane, the more systems are in op or deactivated.
And that.
Yeah. For the shift that I'm doing, I'm turning airplanes. They'll come in from Europe and we turn them right away down to Fort Lauderdale and then back again. So we don't get a lot of ground time on most of them. Let's say the 330, I do the 330 most of the time and the 787. But sometimes we don't have a choice. Like the other day, it came in from Charles de Gaulle, it was a 330 and there was waste dripping from the fuselage drains. I knew right away what it was because you can tell by the consistency and the color. I was like, ugh. And so there's drains all the way down the fuselage. So if any water condensation, sometimes it's raining, you load cargo, it's all dripping down. So it's made to drip, to drip out of the fuselage. But in this case, I was like, oh, that's not good. Go in the back, you can check right away where the waste tank area is. And I could see right away, yep, it's leaking. Automatic AOG, aircraft on ground. Can't fly like that. Then crew chiefs are like, all right, going to the hangar. You're going to follow the plane. I was like, okay. So I spent the whole day changing a dump valve
Oh.
and which you got to get the suit on, respirator, and then it's a bit tight. So then you
Oh.
have the filters on. So here I am thinking, oh, I got room. I can look. And then thunk. I'm like, oh no, I can't see through there. You're doing stuff with mirrors. We had the parts. So 8 hours in and out and the plane back out of the hangar and flew that night back to Lyon. Plan.
Cool.
So Laura doesn't know the difference between, well, she thinks she does, between
Mhm.
speed tape and duct tape. So I want to have her
Okay.
explain the difference and then you can correct her.
Oh. Well, duct tape is plain old and it has a matte
Have-
finish. It has a matte finish. And speed tape is thinner, is more thin, and it has a more shiny finish to it. And it's thinner and it's more smooth.
So speed tape is metal. It's aluminum foil with its tape, but it's very sticky. Sometimes if you're trying to apply some speed tape and you get a piece wrapped around your finger and you try to just yank it off like it's masking tape, I don't know, you got to peel it back a little bit or you're going to hurt yourself. Like it's really, really sticky, which is why
And
it's called
expensive.
and expensive. But that's why they call it speed tape because when you're flying the aircraft, the speeds that you're flying at, duct tape's not going to cut it. Duct tape is string fiber in it, so it's strong, like it holds together well, but it's not as sticky. Like you can't, if you put duct tape on a cardboard box, it'll just come off. Like it doesn't stick like duct speed tape would. But
Here's
I see
a
these
fun
videos.
fact.
Yeah, go. I love fun
When
facts.
when I first started as a flight attendant, they asked us to carry duct tape in our overnight bags in case there was a fire in the hotel room, so you could duct
Oh
tape
yeah.
your door and keep the smoke out. And for years, I had a roll in there, and just like within the last 5 years, I took that roll out, and it was speed tape. So I don't know how somewhere along the lines at America West Airlines, I flipped it, and I have a roll of speed tape in my overnight bag, which
Well,
is quite heavy.
it is heavy. Yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
and
It's
wait. Or they wanted you to just tape yourself into your room in a fire?
If there was a fire and you had to, the smoke was coming in under your door and you couldn't get out, then you could cover it and then go to the window,
Okay. That
which is
still
kind of
not
like,
great, but okay.
I know all these years I've never had to use it.
When the
might buy you
firefighters
some
tried to come
time.
get you, you'd be stuck in there. They couldn't get
I
in.
know. Isn't that weird?
They couldn't open the door and speed tape shut. The speed tape would buy you a little bit more time because it's metal.
Yeah.
So when you outside on the outside of planes, you see that's speed tape. But sometimes you'll
Yeah.
see pictures inside where they're like, that's probably
Yeah.
duct tape, right? If
Yeah,
it's like
duct tape
inside
it's soft,
yeah.
like
When we duct
armrest.
tape or a bar, the bin, if the bin won't shut.
Yeah, well, I've used speed tape on the overhead bin before. That was actually an outside assignment I did. I flew to another town here in the Maritimes, and yeah, because the bin wouldn't shut. We have different colors of speed tape because on our aircraft, the window belts, the cockpit window, or we have a black. The paint scheme around the windows is black now. So when you put silver tape on a black at the gate, you're looking at it, you're like, oh, so now we have black speed tape to use in those areas so that it blends in a little more. And or some of the sealant will peel away. And then so with the speed tape, we could sort of maintain that aerodynamic surface. Around the fuselage, you have these carbon fiber fairings, and then you had the metal fuselage. So in between those two, there'll be a seal. And then a lot of times the seal will start to wear out and then it starts to buzz. So Lara's going overseas overnight, and then every once in a while it's like, this vibration on the phone. What is that? What's going on? So we use the speed tape to temporarily repair that, keep the airflow moving over it without creating that vibration. So that's probably most of our speed tape gets used for.
So let's get
Yeah.
into your travels a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, Les, you came to business. You were shipping back a cart, right?
Yeah, he was shipping back a cart, a beverage cart.
Yeah,
Did
I
that
actually
make
had
it
a
back?
stack of them. Everything made it. It took a little while. That was the first time. So as a hobby, I find stuff and I make things. And Lara just showed the America West luggage label that
This was
made
my
out
gift.
of Sankow.
Made out of an America West Airlines skin.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
184 AW. Look at that. That's pretty cool.
Well,
It's a
mine's already on
737.
luggage.
Yeah, that was a panel. I've been helping out in Ottawa, the airport. And so I've been helping out the fire department with some training because they had a 727 that they were going to burn up as an exercise. So before they did that, I went up with my saw and they had this panel sitting there and it said Northwest on it. I'm like, is that 747? He's like, yeah. And so they gave it to me and I'm like, oh man, no, this is
Oh,
great. Anything that has original color on it is great. The Northwest has that original red, it's that teal green, which was on the engine. So that America West, I found that just laying in the boneyard in California, Mojave. Yeah, those ones are far and few between now as far as the legacy stuff.
oh man, that story when you were crew.
So Fiji, Vanuatu,
Yes.
on the tall ship on the Europa. So the Europa is a three-masted bark. So the tidal bark is a type of sailing ship depending on the number of masts. So you have like clipper and a cutter, and so this is the style of the ship. So 20 permanent crew, 27 voyage crew, which is a guest crew. So it's a sail training ship. So this is a ship that has all the masts with all the lines and the sails like you would see in Master and Commander or like pirate days. And so it's a ship that I've been friends with. I've known the ship since 2000. My cousin was the engineer on board. And so over the years, I've been able to go sail a little bit and also work as an engineer, as a volunteer, doing maintenance and stuff. So this was the trip that I was waiting for when they talked about, well, we're going to be doing the South Pacific one day. We're going to do Fiji and all that. So this was the trip that had chosen as the trip to do. And
So
it was
your
supposed to
birthday?
happen. Yeah, so I turned 50 this year. And it was actually originally planned for 2020. And then with COVID, everything got pushed back. So finally, there's a whole story behind like Fiji Airways. So I bought full fare Fiji Airways. So Montreal, LA, Fiji on Fiji Airways. And with COVID, and of course, non-refundable because I had to be there to meet the ship. After that, I was going
Oh
to come
yeah.
back non-revs. And so that part was okay. And then so I flew to Fiji, and so I was there for 3 days before we boarded. The ship was around. I couldn't see it. I was standing on an island called Beachcomber Island. So I had a hut on the beach, 3 meals a day. But other than that was it. Like it wasn't like Club Med or anything where you could just go to the buffet at any time, or it was like very basic, just amazing. And the best part was the snorkeling, like the quality of the snorkeling, like to go in the water and just see all the coral and all the fish. Like I'd seen it when I was a kid. Like we traveled, my dad was a diver, so we used to go to the Caribbean, like Bonaire, Cozumel, and back in the 80s, those areas were known for the sea life and the coral and all that. So since then, I'd go to Cancun, Dominican, I'd do snorkeling, I'd go for a dive, and it just wasn't the same anymore. It was warming waters, and then with cruise ships, and then just hurricanes and everything else. So when I got to Fiji, I was amazed at how much sea life there is there. And right off the shore, like you just snorkel off from the hut. Like I would just get up in the morning, have coffee, go for a quick snorkel to start the day, and like the water temperature is amazing, the water's clear, and yeah, just coral, fish, all that. And
That
did
does
some
sound
diving,
paradise.
and
Yeah, I've never
yeah,
been to
it
Fiji.
really is. That's amazing. And the aqua blue water, the green water, it's all everything you imagine. Some parts of Hawaii are like that too. But of course, I'm sure there's parts of like around the islands where you could go where it'd be just as good. But so this was the first time since Mozambique where I did my diving, open water diving, which is pretty remote where we were at Tofu, where I saw that much sea life and coral and fish and everything else. It was incredible. So then finally, after 3 days, boarded the ship, and then we spent a few more days in and around the islands of Fiji, and then sailed to Vanuatu. 4 days open sea sailing, and you need to get your sea legs after. So the first day or so, everybody's starting to get a little seasick. And I've experienced it. I sailed before for a few weeks from Amsterdam down to Portugal on Europa on the tall ship, and
Is it like nausea? Is it like
yeah, I guess it'd be
dizzy?
this. It would be similar. Yeah, you get dizzy because of the rocking of the ship, and then also because the swell. So you got this whole motion going all the time, right? So your body's just, what's going on here? If you're not used to it, it's really hard. And so for some people, it hit really hard. And it was actually interesting enough, the ship's doctor who got the worst of it. The first day he was running around tending to everyone. I know, just stay in your bunk, relax, because we had watch systems. We have three watches, so 3 groups, and so 4 hours each. So we would work the helm, so we'd steer the ship. So we'd give us a compass heading. So we had the compass in front of us, and they also had an iPad with a digital display, which I used more because when you get at night and then with the motion, it was easier to focus on the big numbers than trying to follow the needle. And so for me, as long as I could keep the horizon in view, my equilibrium was able to manage. But you could easily, if you got your head down or you're looking up or whatever, like a bit like a vertigo, you get a bit dizzy if you spin in circles and then you stop. Everything's a little bit like
Oh, yeah.
wonky. It's like that, but then all the time. So it takes a while to get used to it. So for some people, some people were really good. They sailed a lot, so they were used to it. Other people, you didn't see them for 3 days because they were like in the bunks all the time. And so it can be hard. And
I just think it's fascinating
we're,
the fact that you're on this cruise and the ship and you're part of the crew. It's
yeah,
not
so
like
we're,
you're just like a princess cruise or something like that.
nah, so this is definitely not
You're
part of
working
a
crew.
cruise line. It's a working crew. Yeah. So you're helping sail the ship. So 32 sails, I think. So 3 masts with different rigging. So we have all the lines.
And are you
I
cooking
actually have the
too?
diagram.
Do you guys take turns
No,
cook?
we have a dedicated galley crew. They handle that. So we have the head chef, and then he has a couple helpers. So
Okay.
here's a diagram, the deck,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you can't really tell it there, but each number is a
Oh.
line, is a rope, and it
Oh,
does a different job, right? So these are all the sails. So yeah, you're working the
wow.
ship. So you're depending on the strength of the wind, the direction of the wind, more sail, less sail, it would change the angle. And we were pretty lucky on this one just because the wind direction was consistent. So for 2 days, we were just heading west, roughly. So the sail setting stayed the same. We were averaging 5 to 7 knots of speed, so it was pretty good. So with this ship, the main propulsion is the sails. So once we're going, engines are off. They'll use the engines once in a while to make up time, or if the wind direction isn't working, and because we still have a schedule to keep, so we got to keep on moving towards our destination, our next stop. So, but yeah, so make sure the ship is sailing safely, and in the meantime, you have the working crew, the permanent crew, who are then they're always doing repairs, always painting, and all that. So you help out with that stuff as well. And then we have to change the sails, we have to raise them up. So then they climb the rigging. So we get trained how to do all that. You put on the harnesses, you climb up into the rigging, and then bring the sails up, bring them down. And so there's quite a bit of work involved. It's amazing the crew that are permanent, the hours that they do, like it's just constant. We had a deck party one night when we got to Vanuatu. And once the barbecue, everything is done, boom, they're all back to work, cleaning the scuppers. And like it's just constant work, work, work. But it's a sea life. It's a life that's what it takes a special person. You have to be a people person too, right? Because now you're in these tight quarters with people all the time. So yeah, it's not for everybody for sure, but it's a great
Tell me
adventure,
about your
and that was.
sleeping arrangements. Tell me about your
So we had
sleeping.
bunks, cabins with two bunks, so mainly for couples, let's say, and then they have 4 and 6. So most of the time you're with a group of people, the boys in one, girls in the other, and so then there's a shower so there's like a small they call it a head on a ship, lavatory, let's say. And so you have the shower, drain, and the toilet. So when you want to shower, you just bring the shower curtain around so you don't get the toilet paper all wet and all that. So,
Huh.
but it's air conditioned and everybody has their bunk. So luckily I got a lower bunk because I like to climb with trees and all that. But I prefer just to roll in and out of my bed at night. So I like to have the lower bunks. Plus it's a bit cooler. And so you lay in your bunk, you draw your curtains. It's like summer camp for adults.
Is it like the
Yeah, they're
bunk
really
in the
nice.
777
Probably a little bit more.
with the curtain?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar. Yeah. Once you draw the curtain a little bit, you have your own little private area. And then against the wall, we do the watch system, do twice a day, 4 hours. I got lucky. I did the 8 to noon and then 8 till midnight. So those were my 2 watches that I was doing with the rest of my group. And so in between, you have free time. So I did a lot of reading, and we had a couple research teams on board. They were doing a survey on plastics in the ocean. We did. So they call it a trawler. It's like a big, looks like a wing that'll just float just below the surface, and it scoops up whatever's in the water. And then they're able, very fine mesh, they're able to separate plastic particles and do a count. So depending on which area they are of the ocean, we've all heard about the plastic garbage island or the sea of plastic, but it's actually everywhere and microscopic. It's from shampoo with the microbeads and also just plastics that end up in the ocean. Over time, it all breaks up, but it doesn't break down. So it's always there. And so we're helping out with the surveys, bringing that out, in and out. The only thing we didn't do was fish. We've had that before where we're in the sea, in
Wow.
the Bay of Biscay. We were hauling tuna in one day and just cutting it up on deck and then throwing the carcass overboard. And then the fillets would go down to the galley, and then they would just do it with the tuna. We were just doing it with like lemon and salt, whatever, and then just eating it like that, like sushi almost. But the galley's pretty busy, so they're not really. If you show up with a fish in their hands, they're like, okay, this wasn't in our program. So they don't encourage too much fishing while we're on the go. But yeah, so the galley is amazing. Like we had every day a different soup for lunch. And, I was commenting, like I had to get these recipes. I could make a book, the soups of Europa. It was amazing. And they would, a lot of people vegetarian. So then a lot of times the vegetarian stuff was looking better than what the rest of us were being served. So they had to put little signs like, no, it's vegetarian only. Keep your hands up. There's only so much to go around. So, and they bake bread every day. They're baking bread because bread takes up a lot of space. So you can't bring loads of bread when they provision for 20, 30-day voyages. Usually like those are the gaps depending on where they're sailing. But yeah, baking bread's a daily routine. So fresh bread every morning. And so you have the vents from the galley up on deck. So you knew when the bread was in the oven because it was just that smell was wafting around. And the only thing better than that is bacon when they're cooking like large
Oh,
amounts of
yeah.
bacon for recipes, whatever. I remember one time we were sailing in Lake Michigan and I was like, what is that smell? It's so good. I'm like, I had no idea. I went down to look. I'm like, what are you guys cooking? Like, it's bacon. I'm like, wow. Maybe you cook bacon at home, you open the windows, whatever. But this was like, maybe it's just the quantity or the quality or something. But yeah,
Which
it
is
smelled
real
really
bacon,
great.
not Canadian.
Well, well, I have a story.
Shots fired.
Are we doing pet peeves already? I have a quick story about Canadian bacon because since we're talking about it, since you brought it up. Newark, Newark's amazing now. Delta's terminal, beautiful. I know we've talked about it before, and they have a lot of different dining options. So one day I was there this year, and I said, oh, I'll treat myself to a nice breakfast. Like, oh, it's eggs Benedict. I'm like, what? Let's do it. And so pet peeve number one, on the order your meal, it's all order on the iPad. And then so you have to give a tip and everything right away. I'm like, I don't even know if it's going to be good. What am I tipping for? Anyway, this particular meal was not good. First thing I noticed when they brought it said Canadian bacon. This is ham. This is not Canadian bacon. So I was like, excuse me. They're like, yeah, something like, yeah. You said it was Canadian bacon. This is ham. Oh no, but that's what we call Canadian bacon. So I'm like, no, that's not Canadian bacon. So real Canadian bacon is female bacon. It's nice and thick. It's got a bit of a cornmeal crust around it. That's Canadian bacon. Yeah. When you guys come out to Montreal, I'll get you some proper Canadian bacon. Yeah. Back to the ship. We sailed for 4 days east across South Pacific. And that whole time we saw 2 ships. The first, when we were right after we left Fiji, we saw one sailboat heading opposite direction. And then for 4 days, we didn't see anybody. We didn't even see airplanes. Like it was just us, the sea, and the stars. It was amazing. The temperature was nice. So like even at night, just in a t-shirt, the sea splashing a little bit. You're like, oh, it was great. So once we got to Vanuatu, was our first visit and checked in. So customs will come on. They'll send the dinghy out to shore. Customs will come out. They'll walk around the ship to check all the passports and all that. So it's a formality because now you're not at the airport. You can't arrive and go to customs. So they got to come to the ship and clear us. But once we did that, then we were cleared into all the islands in Vanuatu. So the trip was actually extended to New Zealand, but I got off of Vanuatu because I didn't have the time to keep going because it would have been almost 25 days at sea. And I already used 3 weeks vacation to do the part that we were doing. So, but I plan to spend a bunch more time in Vanuatu at the end and then fly back home from there. But we did 4 different islands in Vanuatu. So the first one, Esposito Santo, was the one furthest north, and the airfield that was there was used by the Americans during World War II. And there's a place called $1 Million Point where before they left, they dumped all the equipment into the sea, trucks, equipment, and it's all still there. You can scuba dive and see all this stuff. Yeah. So that was our first stop. We could go ashore, and so we got the dinghies out. So that right next to Champagne Beach was another beach, and it was free, and there was a bar and a restaurant. Perfect.
Oh, even better.
Yeah. So went ashore, had a meal, did some snorkeling, and got some great. That was our first taste of Vanuatu. And the next day on the same island, we went to the Blue Hole. So we canoed up a freshwater river to an area called Blue Hole. It's like a swimming hole. Super clear water, fresh water. You can see all the way down to the bottom. There's fish and everything. What was great about that is they did a water dance. So the women who were dressed in traditional, grass skirts, or whatever, would stand in the water and they would slam the water in a rhythmic fashion to make music. And we were the last canoes to arrive, and I thought there was like drums on shore, and then the ladies were just singing their songs. But it was actually the way they do it. They're creating music with the water and singing traditional songs. So that was pretty amazing. And then full on jungle, right? So birds, all the sounds of the jungle, and then flowers and spiders and all the stuff you see in the jungle. So that was a great excursion. This trip was a little different for Europe, but normally you don't get that many land stops. So it was a lot more of a sightseeing tour and a lot less of like open sea sailing. You don't normally get that many opportunities to leave the ship. You might get some shore leave certain places. So that was another reason why I chose this particular voyage, because I wanted to visit some of these islands. Vanuatu is pretty remote. You guys probably never even heard of it. When I went to the travel clinic to get vaccinations, whatever, they had to look it up. They didn't even know, like, Vanuatu, where's that? So it's all
I only know
volcanic.
it from, Survivor. Survivor was there one season.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one of the early
Mhm.
seasons.
That's the only
Vanuatu.
reason. Yeah. And
Yeah. So that was
Champagne Beach, is that a nudist beach? Is that why they charged?
no,
Well,
I don't think.
I was going to
Well,
ask that.
any beach can be a nudist if you're Lara.
Yeah, no, Vanuatu, they're still quite religious, conservative. So yeah, that's not something that would be acceptable there.
Is
Yeah.
it
So
is it Catholic?
Well, so just
look
do a
it
few
up.
think
Hail
it is
Marys and
too.
you're fine, Lara.
Yeah. Yeah, back in the day, the missionaries would go and try and it's like, no, you shouldn't eat each other. Cannibalism bad. And that was one of the last places where it was still a thing. And culturally, it was just what they did. Between villages or whatever, they would just go and knock one of the guys over the head, throw him in a pot and eat him. That was just how it was there.
In a dick.
Really,
He's out.
they're looking around. Who's the juiciest one here? Yeah. So then after that, we went to one of the other islands, Imbrem, and to see a ram dance. So this is a dance they would do to bring good luck with weather for the crops and all that thing. And it's only traditionally done. It's not really something they do for tourists that much. They have to have the approval of all the chiefs in the villages. They would all come together to perform this. So we got on the dinghies, went ashore, and we walked for about an hour, like same thing, full on jungle, huge palm trees like you'd see on Gilligan's Island. Like it was just magical place. And the roads all like this volcanic soil. It was very rustic and terrain. So it's either really dusty or like mucky, like glue almost. Like certain areas where the creeks would cross, it was like really mucky. But it was interesting to walk because we'd go through these little villages and then like there'd be a school, whatever, and you'd see all the kids watching. They're like, oh, tourists, because they don't get a lot of people coming by. So they're all waving, they're like, hi, hi. So then we went off the road up into the jungle, and then they had these little thatched huts and all these costumes. So they had these dancers who are all in like banana leaf. So they look like a stack, like you would see where they're drying crops in a field. And then all of a sudden they started moving around. I'm like, oh, okay. And then they had the dancers who are naked, except they have their penis covered with a sheath and then like just a strap around their waist. And then they had their spears and all their, paraphernalia. And then used as drumming. And so they'd stomp around in these circles and do these dances. And like the ground where they would do it traditionally was like really hard and flat. And I noticed that their feet were huge and flat. Like they're just doing this stomping dance all the time. And it was damp when we were there, but they say when it's really dry, it just starts with this cloud of dust gathers around, and it's really mystical. Or it's a magic. You can see that there's something going on here, and yeah, it was quite an adventure to see that.
That's super cool.
That was probably one of the highlights. Yeah, like if you look up videos, you see some of that, and I'll show you pictures too. It's pretty far out there travel. This is off the beaten track. And so that's what's nice about having your own ship. You just, we'll just go there. So drop anchor, go ashore and check out these places. You're flying in on caravans, whatever, and then jeep for half a day to get to some of these places. So we're pretty spoiled like that. So then we sailed on to another island, and then I went to see Dungoos, sea cows. We had two options. We go
Like a manatee?
manatee, yeah. So we had the option to go see them or try to see them. It's like whale watching. You get in a boat, you go, and maybe you see them, maybe you won't. Or we did snorkeling. So I said, I'll do some snorkeling. And so I already did quite a bit in Fiji. So I said to the captain, like, I don't really need to go. Like, if there's permanent crew that could use a break and want to do stuff, I don't mind to give my space. And they're like, no, you on that boat. I'm like, yes, sir. So off we went. And so we had a guide. And so we were in a cove, and then around I guess the best snorkeling was sort of around the other side, but the waves were already building up, 3 foot, 4 foot waves. Like it was getting pretty rough, but our guide insisted, no, we got to, again, some great snorkeling, successful. But I did notice Vanuatu, it wasn't as good as Fiji. I found Fiji much better as far as
For
quality of the
snorkeling.
sea life for snorkeling. Yeah. Cause I did 4 dives, and the dives are great. We did diving in Vanuatu as well, and a lot of sea turtles, like 5 or 6
Oh,
sea turtles right there. And then I guess they're used to seeing divers because they weren't affected at all by us being around, and they were just doing their thing. So that was our next stop. We did the dive, and I was telling Tyler about this, about losing audio on a video, whatever. So we had 5 of us on the dive, and so I had the camera, I had a GoPro, I had it all set up. I handed it to our dive master, and then I have a noisemaker so I could get everybody's attention. So, come on around, picture. So everybody comes around. Like, hey. And then turtle was right there, so I'm shooting the turtle, all that. Finish the dive, go back on board, and that night was the next day. Some of us are leaving the ship now, including myself. So we had a barbecue on deck with Hawaiian music and all the lights. Everybody's put on their Hawaiian shirts. We had a great time. So I pulled the laptop, I put in the card, I started looking for video. None of it's there. Right up to where I handed the camera to the dive master. He started pushing other buttons. I had it all set up. He just had to push one to record, right? And then I guess he pushed something, and I didn't look after I took it back from him. So no group photo, no video of the group.
oh,
Lost all the turtle video, and yeah, get back on board. And yeah, so that sinking feeling like Tyler had when we had our practice recording. And yeah, so that was great. And then Port Vila was our last stop. That's where I flew home from. And so everybody had the day to come ashore, even the permanent crew, which is great. We all ended up at one bar. They had a big show that night, fire dancers, great music, and pizza oven and beer, and everything was good. I had a small resort, just a couple days, relaxed, some of the other crew, and then slowly everybody else was gone, and then I was the last one. And then I really started hitting me like, oh man, it's over. I got to go home. And so when you go from a group of 27, seeing all these amazing things, and just probably a trip of a lifetime for sure. And I still had another day. I could have stayed, but I was like, I didn't have it in me anymore. I was like, well, I'm just gonna go home. I'm done. And so I left. I had a confirmed flight to get out of Port Vila because the airline, Air Vanuatu, had gone belly up. So then I bought a ticket on Fiji Airways to make sure I can get back to Fiji. Anyway, I just went to the travel agency and just grabbed a Zed fare because now we can just do it online, and just left the next day. And then Fiji back to LA. Took a day there. I went out to the desert, got some more airplane bits, and then came home. So that was my South Pacific adventure. So, but once I got home, it was like a few days where I was like, I wouldn't say depressed, but it really hit me. I was like, I was sad that it was over. And then at one point, my wife's like, "Oh, if you want to sail full time, no problem. I'll help you pack." So I was like, okay, yeah, I need to get out of this little rut here, enjoy it for what it was. Yeah. So that was my South Pacific adventure.
That's
And
so
you
cool.
can put in the show notes the link to the ship and the sailing they do. Anybody can go. You don't need experience, but it's definitely,
I
you
like
can take medication for the seasickness too, right? So it's not something that you need to suffer if you don't need to, right? So, and yeah, it's definitely a unique adventure for sure. So, and I didn't even know tall ships was a thing. Like my cousin, he was the engineer, and he sailed into Halifax 2000. So I'm like, okay, I'll fly out there and then I'll fly back because he was having vacation with his wife then after he finished sailing. And then I was like amazed at the tall ship life, tall ships, the sails, and the whole tall ship festival. Halifax is pretty big. Amsterdam is huge. They have massive ones in New York and Boston every couple of years. So yeah, it's something to see. Good luck finding parking or even trying to get lunch at these places when they're hosting these events. But I had that when we were in Quebec City. It's like 5 or 6 years ago. They came here with the ship, and so part of that, it's great. The whole scene. And so when you're alone and you're single, it's great. But then you try to bring your family or a stroller through the streets, and all this is going on. Yeah, they're not having the same experience that I was hoping for. So, but when the kid's a bit older, yeah, it's quite. I'll bring them on the ship too. We could sail. So that's my plan. But yeah, I highly recommend it.
I think going to some of those places that you get to experience the culture would be so cool. And it sounds like
Yeah,
it's not just going somewhere that's made for tourists. You're going places to see how people live and the culture and the beauty that's there. It sounds really cool.
yeah. You have off the beaten track, and this was like off the beaten track. Like this is way
Yeah.
off the beaten track. So, and we had a guide, local guide, who came on when we first arrived in Vanuatu. So in the evening, he would do talks about different things. So we were armed with a bit of knowledge before we went ashore, which also was great. So it wasn't just that we just bought tickets and showed up at something. Like we were really immersed into it. Yeah, it was amazing. So it's gonna be tough to beat.
That's awesome.
When I was going out there, I went to the Star Alliance Lounge at LAX, and because I had some time to kill, so I normally it luckily was a bit quieter, so I was able to just pay because I don't have points like you guys. And oh, you guys all lounge this, lounge that. I'm like pet peeve. It was nice. The one in LA, they have this open area with a fire pit and like a waterfall. You see the apron and then the
Oh,
buffet, the
nice.
bar. Yeah, it's really great. That was because it's 10-hour flight. I had a full day here before I left to go to Los Angeles, like just last minute packing. I knew for years I was doing this, but that the morning I was still scrambling. It's how it is. And so reset, shower, and then that 10-hour overnight flight's not in economy, of course. So I brought gifts for the crew.
Oh, well,
Monique, I gave you a Fiji Airways tag, right?
yeah.
Was it the Fiji Airways one I gave you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had a handful. I had enough for every crew member,
Oh, they love
and I'm like,
that.
"For sure, this is gonna be I'm gonna get an upgrade out of this," but I got a bottle of Fiji water to myself, and that was
Mm.
they were very nice. Knew because my buddy Dave I work with here, shout out Dave Niker, he's from Fiji, and he told me because he sends his family often, is no, Fiji
They
Airways,
don't
they don't upgrade. That's it. It's like Qatar, same thing. Like, it's not Delta's a different thing. I showed up with Northwest tags, and the guys, "The door's closed. If I have one, it's yours." And so both legs on Fiji Airways, I had tags for the whole crew, flight crew, and everybody. And yeah, and small airlines, I mean, they work that plane for sure, right? Like you, Lara, with the America West one, you said, "Oh, I've worked that plane for sure." So
Oh, I know I
yeah,
have, yeah.
yeah, I know candies are great for flight crew, but key tags are the best because that's
Key
something
tags,
that
well, yeah,
yeah. And I do stuff with a lot of all the key tag guys. Plane tags, the biggest one, Dave Hall in Los Angeles, Motowar plane tags. They do a release every 2 weeks. They do a release, and they have the highest quality, like the card design. So they do helicopters. They do passenger, his Atlas Air 747. So
whoa.
they find a lot of that nice original paint stuff, right? So this is something I'd like to take you guys. And next time we do LA or whatever, you guys do LA, I want to come out there and Proud Bird, of course,
Oh,
and then
Proverbs
go down.
for Dorkfest.
Yeah, and then we'll go see Motorwork. We'll see Dave Hall. So here's a
Really cool.
Delta L1011.
I like that. It's pretty.
So I got into the tag thing a little bit, just my interest through Lance, our friend Lance
Oh,
Lockhart.
yeah. Wild
So we
Bird
had the
Art.
contract, Wild Bird Art. So we had the contract, KLM, and when those planes retired, I bought this MD-11 logo cutout, which up here on the shelf. The very last MD-11 passenger service flight left Montreal. I signed it off for your flight inspection, and
Oh, that's right.
that was the last MD-11 scheduled passenger flight ever. That was it. After that, it's only been cargo. They did a few charters like fan flights, but that's been it for the MD-11. So my little claim to fame, and it was great that it was KLM, my home country airlines.
Yeah,
Yeah, pretty pretty proud of
that's
that.
great.
So, and just through that, some of my neighbors aren't really happy with me a lot of sometimes 'cause sitting there with a grinder, cutting away fuselage pieces all day long.
I want to hear one more story from you because you told it before, if you're willing to
Okay.
tell it. Your
Yeah.
Mexico story and issue you
Oh
had.
yeah. Travel tips. Travel tips.
I don't know if it was
Yeah.
a
So,
tip
Travel
or
tips.
it was a funny story.
well,
but-
it was a funny story, and there's a few good tips actually out of
Okay.
that. So
Okay. Good.
I was down in Guatemala. We're building this orphanage down there. I went there 3 times. This group here in Canada called Friends of the Orphans, and every year they organize a trip to go down to South America. We've been down in Peru, Guatemala, I know the Dominican, and a few other places. So building an orphanage or like the houses for the caretakers to live in and whatnot. So this was the second or third time. Anyway, I was a big fan of Lonely Planet, and so one of the shows they did back then was they were camping in the Yucatan around Cancun or further south, Tulum. And so, I'm going to do that. So I flew to Cancun from Guatemala, rented a car and a Beetle. I'm like, oh, great. It was cheap. I used to have a Beetle. I love these old cars. And I started driving along. I'm like, oh, this is so great. I'm like, ooh, beach. I'll go for a swim. I'll jump in the water for a few minutes. And I was actually heading to town to buy swim trunks. I didn't have any with me at the time. And so, I got these boxers. They look like trunks. It'll be fine. Jump in the water, swim around, laugh, whatever. Come back, car's empty.
No.
No luggage,
Like,
no money, no ID, nothing. Empty.
no
And
way.
I hadn't even checked into a hotel yet. So I had no place to stay. I had no money, no ID.
Did you have
In
shoes?
Cancun. So my boots were under the seat. They missed it. Otherwise, I would have been barefoot. So I had boxer shorts and boots and a rental car and my
Oh
goggles
my
for swimming.
gosh.
And so here I was in Cancun.
Oh,
And I was like, okay, now what? So see tourist police driving by, flag them down, say, hey. And they're just like, oh, yeah, happens every day. And so I think what happened was, I'm sure of it, that someone from the rental agency followed. And then as soon as I left the car, they had a spare key, they just unlock it, take my bag and gone, right? So,
no way. That's so
so
bad.
yeah, so it was a bit of an adventure. I had American Express. Luckily the I was still a Dutch citizen. So when I came to Canada, I remained Dutch citizen and then was here as a permanent resident or landed immigrant. Because my passport, I saw a Dutch passport, I had to go through the Dutch embassy to get new documents, whatever. But luckily they had a consulate at the airport in Cancun. And so I got a hold of the lady. The police gave me the number. I spoke to her, explained the situation. So she was able to go back to the rental agency who had made a photocopy of my passport and my driver's license to
Oh,
confirm
good.
everything. But their printer didn't work, so she had to take a printer from her office, go back to the rental. Like, it was just this whole thing. Like, you can't even make this stuff up. And anyway, so I get to
So she
American
had to take
Express.
her own printer down.
Yeah. In the meantime, so go to American Express. I'll meet you there because then they'll give you emergency money, whatever. So I'm there and I had no shirt on. So the guy there, no, like you can't come in. I'm like, I got nothing. I know. I'm like, hell, banditos. I got robbed. And then they're like, oh. So I said, yeah, the embassy's coming. Okay, well, they better be coming. Yeah, they're coming. So she came and brought me a T-shirt, which Ottawa Jazz Fest. It was a medium, so it was a little snug, but it's kind of funny. And American Express gave me cash. I went down to Sears, bought shirt and pants. I still have the shirt and clothes, whatever. And then so I start making arrangements to fly home now. But now I don't have my company ID, so they had to go through headquarters and find out, confirm, and all this other stuff. Anyway, I go to the airport, I meet the girl from the embassy. She says, oh, did you bring pictures? I'm like, no. What do you mean pictures? Oh, we need new passport pictures. All right, well, where's your camera? I said, no, you have to go into town. So I had to leave the airport again, go to Walmart, get pictures, go back to the airport. Anyway, by then we got the whole flight thing sorted out. Fly back to Toronto. So it was 30 degrees Celsius in Cancun. I get to Toronto, minus 30 Celsius, 60-degree difference, right?
And you have
So
no
I'm-
clothes.
Nothing. I walk through baggage area. I go to customs, like, sir, your luggage. I'm like, nope, got nothing. No luggage. Anyway, so I had a copy of my paperwork and all that. So that was fine. I explained the situation, police report, no problem. Welcome home. Good luck. I go to get a rental car. Now I don't have my license, the original copy, so they won't give me a car. So there's a police outpost at the airport. So I go talk to them, and so they come over. So give this guy a car. Anyway, so yeah, it was a whole thing. So anyway, when you get somewhere, go to your hotel, check in, secure your belongings, then explore. Don't just go from the airport and jump in the water like I did. And also, when it comes to car rentals, stick to major brands. Uh, for that reason, you have less rigmarole. But when it comes to renting cars, My tip is to stick to the major, like budget, Avius, whatever. Spend a little bit extra so that you're at the terminal when you drop the car off or close by.
It's a good
Yeah,
idea.
for me, it's made the difference a bunch of times. Yeah. So that was
Those are good
my
travel tips. Yeah.
yeah. Funny story. My kids keep talking every now and then. They want, oh, tell us the story again, Dad, about you wearing your underwear in Mexico. I'm like,
Then you say, which time?
yeah, which time? Yeah.
So what we do is we take, like when I do my group trip with my cousins, we take a photograph of on the printer of our passports, and then we leave
Mhm.
them here with somebody in
Yeah.
the United States. And so then if something like that happened, they could fax them
Yeah.
to us,
Yeah.
because I mean,
Email.
you've
Yeah.
just lost everything. Even if you had a copy in your suitcase, you no longer had your suitcase.
You can even just
Yeah.
email that
Yeah.
picture to yourself too, so it's digital somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now that's what I do. I have pictures of all the passports, and then I have it in an email. So yeah, if we end up in a situation again, yeah. But that's what I did after that. That's what I did is I made copies and I left it with my neighbor. I said,
Yeah.
so one day I might have to call you.
Well, it's a good thing
Yeah,
you
that's
weren't
good. Yeah,
skinny dipping.
yeah, that would have been interesting. So yeah, that
But
was
now you
broad
know how to
daylight,
do it with the
public.
take the leaves and you can just wrap around. Well, like a
Yeah,
banana
exactly.
leaf.
After Vanuatu, I just got to find some banana leaves and some rope, and I'll be good to go. So, yeah, I think for sure I wouldn't have not gotten into the American Express office if I was just wearing that. So, but yeah, one for the books for sure. So, and it's one of those stories too where it was a good thing I was on my own, because if I was with my wife, whatever, I'm like, well, first of all, I wouldn't have just arrived and gone swimming. It would have been like, um, but one of those situations where like, why, look what we're doing now. We're stuck here. We have nothing. So yeah, luckily it was just me. I'm like, all right, I'm fine. Figure it out. No, it's not the first time this has happened around here, but yeah, a lot of pieces to that story. It was, and that was just a
But thanks for
Cole's Note
sharing.
version.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah,
And thanks for being the guest again.
Yeah.
Glad we finally got this to work out and never could hear your stories because they were so good. That's why after we're done, I felt so terrible, but because I was like, these were this is such a good, and, and
yeah,
I think you, what to expect. And so I felt terrible, but I'm glad we finally got this because, your stories,
yeah. No, I got lots of maintenance stories, and I look forward to coming back on.
So
And
good.
and that's why I enjoyed listening to the show, because I've listened to pretty much all of them, and then the odd time Lara's like, "Oh, I forgot my bag," so I used the hairdryer bag. So I was in Quebec City, and it is in French, so it looked like a fancy brand, and I was like, so I
Mhm.
sent him pictures. So yeah,
I made a picture of it was a hair dryer bag.
and she's like, "Yeah, I used that once." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, I remember." And she's like, "Oh, okay, you are a fan. You have been listening." I say, "Yeah,
Yeah.
do my homework." And like in there, but I know exactly where they are, what they're doing. So it's listening to your show is the same in that regard, where it's like, yeah, I've the exact same thing. But I've learned stuff too. Like I didn't know about Proudbird. And I've been to LA like
Oh,
a dozen times. So last time I was there, well, I'll go check it out. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. So yeah,
Well,
thank
thank
you for
you
having me back.
again.
I'm glad we got
Yeah,
all
thank you for
worked
your
out.
support.
And
yeah. Thank
look-
you for your patience.
no, it's been great. Actually, it helped me get this off ready. So
You're the
everything,
perfect first guest.
For sure.
but-
Yeah.
If
and like I
if
said,
you listen to this, but to our listeners, if you listen and you have stuff that you collect, let us know. Or also, if you've been to some of those same places that we've never been to Fiji or any of those islands. So
Oh, thank you. And if you want to reach us, you can find us at the Non Rev Lounge podcast at gmail.com. And everyone stay safe. Bye.
all right, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
This has been Non Rev Lounge. This episode was sponsored by Staff Traveler, which is the #1 app to get your non rev loads. It is used by over 800,000 people from all airlines the world over and built to make your non rev trips easy and stress free. Sign up now for free at stafftraveler.com/non rev lounge.
I've went to JFK a few times on purpose to go check out the hotel. And so when you go into that terminal, it's amazing with the legacy airlines like the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, like TWA, Pan Am, 707s, DC-8. So when you go there, the way it's all set up, it's a bit of a museum. They have these little nooks and crannies, like where it used to be a lounge or a VIP area, and then they have a setup at the office for the furniture from the 60s, a thing, and it's really cool. And then they have that pool on the roof, which you guys know about, and then there's a bar up there too. It's like a ski chalet, après ski. sort of setup. It's nice. You can see a lot of you got good views of the runways there. And then
Well, I like the
else-
tunnel because I've walked down that tunnel. So
Yeah, it's really
iconic,
neat.
TWA,
Mhm.
that round tunnel. It's red
Yeah, it's nice. And in the Manhattan.
in that way.
Yeah, and it's great for the kids too, because my son Liam, he's a big Spider-Man fan, so he's been playing all the Spider-Man games, which is all happening in New York, right? When we were on the subway, he's like, I know this place, I've seen this place, so it was fun. Captain seems expensive. So, oh,
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man! Spider-Man! Spider-Man!
Bye, Peter.
yeah, that's Liam, Peter Parker, yeah.